Have I a tongue to doom my brother's death, and shall the same give pardon to a slave? My brother slew no man, his fault was thought, and yet his punishment is cruel death. Who sued to me for him? Who, in my rage, kneeled at my feet and bade me be advised? Who spake of brotherhood? Who spake of love? Who told me how the poor soul did forsake the mighty Warwick and did fight for me? Who told me in the field by Tewkesbury he rescued me and said, "Dear brother, live and be a king"? That is from Richard III, but that's not Richard. Yeah, this is from Act 2, Scene 1 of Richard III. This is Edward, who's king right now, speaking. I thought I'd do a non-Richard. Richard talks a lot in Richard III, and he has a lot of beautiful speeches, but a lot of them are more well-known than this nugget, which I love. I mean, Edward, I mean, most of the Plantagenets are kind of dicks, and Edward is kind of a dick, too. So I haven't been overly fond of him in the story up through now. And it is questionable as to how sincere Edward is in this moment. I think it's more powerful if he's really sincere. And I think that actually, as a character, I think if you follow the arc through all of the Henry VI through Richard III, I don't know, I think that so often, I think on the page, the characters like Richard and Edward tend to read a little more archetypal, less human, more like less relatable, I guess. And I think that, but this applies to Richard too, but also for Edward, I think that if he has a little more humanity in him, in terms of someone who doubts and someone who feels remorse and feels real love for his siblings, then this scene in particular comes up a lot more strongly. And I mean, at the same time, like, he's in this position because at the beginning of the play, Richard tries to sow seeds of dissent between Edward and Clarence, their other brother, and Edward is king, but he's also, new to that power, and he's jealous and paranoid, and he takes Richard's kind of manipulation, hook, line, and sinker. He just falls for it, and he sends out an order to have his brother killed. And then he ends up sending out another order later that's like, no, wait, I didn't mean that. And in this scene, Richard tells him, kind of in a really dick-like way, that Clarence is dead. And Edward at the time thought that the second order had been delivered, that the sentence had been reversed and he wasn't going to be killed. And so this is him finding out that, oh crap, in my rage, I actually killed my own brother. And I think that plays better if he really regrets that. And I think that there can be something there with a new king, a king that's not, he hasn't been king for decades or anything. He's relatively new to the throne, and the power is new. The power of a king is weighty, and certainly can result in people making rash decisions that they regret. I mean, if you take that context out of it, if you just look at this at a guy who, just take it out of the histories and just say, there's a guy with a brother, and he had someone try to kill his brother. and then he tried to back out of it, and it was too late, and his brother was dead. And that, like, that's it. But it's just so the poetry is so, it cuts to the very core of that, like, relationship. What does it feel like to have a family member that you are angry at, but then you hurt in an irrevocable way? It's just, and something about the repetition of the lines. Who told me? Who, like, there's such a beautiful kind of waking up structure to the speech, and it goes on for a few more lines after where I stopped. But the first lines where he's kind of like in a bit of a daze about what he just did. He's like, because he's being asked by another character to, like, pardon his servant or something for something unrelated, and he's kind of just like, if I can kill my own brother, if I can order the assassination of my own brother, how can I be expected to pardon someone, rightly or wrongly, that just like a peasant? I'm awful. That's what I get from that first couple lines. And then he kind of just says, like, well, wait a second. Like, that first time, I wasn't just by myself. You were all here. Why didn't you say something? Like, why? And the play, and a lot of Shakespeare's plays, highlight a very important theme that's very relevant today, of not being afraid to speak out to those in power or those with strength. We live in a time, unfortunately, where there are people who are in positions of power that kind of just throw words around with reckless abandon and don't give any sort of thought or feeling to their actions. They just kind of do stuff. And while I would hope that some of those people in positions of power would have a genuine moment like this, where, like, they look at something they've done and be like, was that the right thing to do? That was maybe something very bad that I just did. I should maybe think about my actions. So while it's maybe unfortunate that not everyone is going to listen to reason, I think it's important that if you are in a position where you're seeing someone do something or say something that's not right, and they're surrounded by people that are just kind of standing around letting it happen, it's the dilemma of, do I keep silent now because it's easier and it's less awkward and I can just kind of go about my business, or in some cases even further, like, avoid being yelled at or blacklisted or worse, or do I say, you know what, nobody's saying anything, but this is wrong, and if I'm going to be punished or ostracized or made fun of for pointing that out because nobody in the room realizes it, then that's what we all have to figure out. Are we comfortable? Can we sacrifice that? And I think in moments like this, where Edward looks back, it's like, oh my God, I made a mistake. I regret it. That's, on the flip side, I don't know. We don't get really too deep into the minds of these advisors and loyalists to Edward. But I would hope that some of them would be like, shit, I really should have said something, And so, at risk of that happening, where you look back and be like, shit, I should have said something, especially if the consequences are much more dire than, like, maybe momentary discomfort or awkwardness of saying something, action. And, like, I feel like action, thought-driven action, is just always better than inaction, in moments where you think something is wrong. it's unfortunately because it's like kind of instilled in our culture to like not raise your hand unless you know the right answer. So if you're in a situation where a lot of like bad shit is happening and nobody's saying anything, there's that kind of almost drilled response of like, well, no one's saying anything, so I must be missing something because I don't want to speak up and be like wrong or have missed something. It's like, well, you know what? Maybe in those moments you just live with that and you say something and you're like, oh, I missed that. Sorry, I'm an idiot. Like, is that really all that bad? Because by the same token, in school or whatever on the job when you're learning stuff at work or whatever, you're not going to learn if you don't speak up and like try and be like, oh, is it this? And okay, maybe you're wrong that time, but if you just kind of live in constant fear of like, well, I don't know for sure, so I'm just not going to say anything, you're not going to learn. So, and it's unfortunate because that's kind of how you are drilled, or at least how I remember being drilled in school, or what I saw. I mean, I didn't really give a shit. I just would kind of constantly like raise my hand, be like wrong and stuff. But it's what I see, it's what I remember seeing, and I would assume is still out there, is that like people don't want to be wrong, people don't want to say something that's incorrect or awkward. It's like, maybe just say it. Maybe just say something and, preface or couch that in like, well, this is what I thought was going on, so I'm just saying something. And then if someone's like, well, actually it was this, and I'm glad you said something, but there's nothing to worry about. And then, okay, cool. The situation is fine. I'm rambling here. But yeah, I didn't think about any of this stuff when I was doing the sonnet, but I just kind of got on this tangent. So yeah, don't be afraid to speak out to power if you see bad shit happening. Shakespeare said so.